I have a special intro today prepared for you, if you're ready, because today is Valentine's Day. Whether or not you celebrate it or not, or think it's a scam, which it totally is. But I've prepared a little something to open the show.
Okay.
Mike, your beard flows from the sky to the ground, wrapping your face, keeping you warm as your ink pens abound. Federico, with your iPads and coffee, supporting bakeries all over Rome. I hear your dogs barking. I think Sylvia is home. Roses are indeed red. Violets are somehow blue. I'm really sorry. This is the intro, and you probably are too.
You're a genius. You're a genius.
That is beautiful. I feel like I want to marry you. Can you get a divorce and marry me instead?
Can you write my wedding vows? You need to do a bit of them in Romanian, so just as long as you're good with that part.
It's fine. Everybody does vows on Google Translate. It's romantic anyway.
Stephen, I want to give you a tiny story and a little cautionary tale. So, for about 100 episodes of The Pen Addict, every single episode, I used to come up with a special name for Brad. That became very, very difficult over time. You are setting yourself up for something here. I think you should continue to explore your creativity week after week, but be careful and make sure you're well prepared.
At some point, I'll be back to the from Relay FM Disconnected.
But it ain't today.
It's not today, but we do have a lot of stuff to talk about. We should thank the sponsors who made this episode possible, SaneBox, Anchor, and Zola. We have some follow-up, and we are going to start in the land of the tiny heads.
It's a land now?
It is. This is not as new as we thought it was. Someone on Twitter, and I'm sorry, I looked for the tweet this morning and couldn't find it, so please accept my apologies. The New York Times has an illustration on their website from 2015 that not only has a tiny head, it's a tiny head mime, I think.
Mime police officer. What's funny to me is last night, me and Nadine are in bed, and we're just like reading on our phones or our iPads or whatever, and she pokes me, and she shows me this image. She's like, see? So I don't know where this came out, but this was on the front page of Reddit yesterday. So that's how it was been found and sent to us, including by my fiancé.
Moving on, our next stop is a link at The Economist talking about banned drugs in sports, and the illustration has some people with tiny heads, including one guy right in the middle with massive arms lifting some weights. So I don't know if having a tiny head leads you to drug use or if drugs are the cause of the tiny head syndrome. It's very confusing to me which comes first, but it's troubling, at least.
Is the name now THS, tiny head syndrome? Is that a thing?
I think so.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe. We then move on to a blog post by something called Typeform. I'm not real familiar with Typeform, but they have...
At the very bottom of this page is one of the most horrific tiny head images I've ever seen.
Tiny head and huge hands.
Huge hands.
Huge hands.
No.
Horrible.
With
just
very
horrible.
troubling fingernails. That's really the most upsetting part of this illustration. So that's also in the show notes if you want.
So thanks to Lexus for sending that horrific image in.
Yeah, that's burned in my mind forever.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Snapchat, which used to be a thing. I don't know. They had good quarterly results, so maybe they're a thing again. Apparently, they have a filter that looks very much like a photo booth filter where you can shrink your head. So I'm not sure this counts because it's not an illustration. I think Chad is a little bit of a tiny head wannabe, maybe, but I'll give it to him.
Is this a half point? Normally, we would say this is a half point.
Yeah, it's a half point.
Half point for Chad.
Half point. Yeah, he lost the round robin. But I have some news. It started a couple of weeks ago. Last week, I believe the episode title was Tiny Head Pandemic. It's everywhere. And the three of us have come down with THS. We have an amazing illustration that's in the show notes. It's the chapter art for this chapter, if you're listening to it in a podcast client that supports that sort of thing. And it's on a T-shirt over at Cotton Bureau, which you should go check out.
We decided if you can't beat them, join them. so we have tiny heads now too.
Maybe it's not, maybe I think my tweet was maybe it's a revolution and we're joining in. So these shirts are up on Cotton Bureau for the next couple of weeks. The artwork is just amazing. They're done by Chris Rowland, who did your awesome PodCon poster, right?
Yep, Chris is an incredible illustrator whose work I enjoy very much. And when we decided that it was time for us to embrace our true tiny head form, we went to Chris to ask him if he could help depict our new permanent state. And this T-shirt, I will say, I mean, I don't own it yet, but from a design perspective, is my favorite T-shirt design that I have ever been a part of. I absolutely adore this illustration of the three of us in our ultimate forms. It's wonderful. I have pens in my pocket. Stephen is very fancy. He's Mr. Work Business Stephen with his laptop. Yeah. And ultimate Federico in a stripy T-shirt. It's just
as always,
so good.
Kate pointed out that in our previous art, Federico is also wearing that same stripe shirt. I mean, that's the level of detail here.
Yep. Federico only wears that striped shirt. That's why.
Yeah, he doesn't wear anything else. You sent us a draft of this, I think, over the weekend, and I just started laughing. Just it makes me so happy. It looks really awesome on a shirt that we did a gray, and then sort of a blue, and then sort of a in between blue and gray, like a slate-ish color. It has a name that I can't think of.
Indigo.
Let's call it Space Gray. Space Gray. That's what Apple would do.
Yeah, it's just a version of Space Gray. Like, it doesn't look like any other Space Gray.
That's how it works.
Yeah, and we should say this is a limited run, so we're only going once these are gone, they are gone. So if you're interested in one, I would jump on it.
Yep, and Cotton Bureau now they do reduce shipping costs outside of the US. So in the past, their shipping was pretty expensive, but they now have flat rate cheap shipping. So this is why we're going with Cotton Bureau because they've gotten some great deals there. So no matter where you are in the world, you can get your hands on one of these. I'm extremely excited. Please go buy this T-shirt because trust me, you will regret it if you don't buy it. This is possibly the best T-shirt that has ever been created by humans.
If you get one of these and you come say hi to WWDC, Mike and I can officially promise that Steven will give you a high five.
That is true.
Make sure to get a T-shirt and demand a high five from Steven at WWDC if you come say hi. Yeah.
I was nervous you were going to say a hug, and I wasn't.
So does I. I was quite proud of Federico. He let you off there.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Because that I would not have agreed to that.
I know.
All right, so that is the tiny head section of the show. It's a regular thing here on this award-winning Apple podcast.
Did we win any awards of when? The
don't worry
awards?
Don't worry about details like that. I need to talk about an award-winning band from Italy called The Seniors, who we uncovered last week. We're on Apple Music, and I wanted to share some of the Seniors mania that has been occurring throughout the land with people bringing HomePods into their life. So Ed Dale from Australia was the first person to send a video to us of him playing music on his HomePod. To illustrate a fantastic sound effect thing that the HomePod does, had a little video that I posted on Twitter with some wonderful Seniors music. And but probably my favorite, and these will all be in the show notes, at _here_before on Twitter, sent to us a hitherto unreleased HomePod ad. I will say no more, but you should go and watch that video because it's real good.
The best part of this situation that you both have manufactured on this show
is that brought it
you
up.
Did it. You did it. We didn't even know.
Well,
I may have edited 2 of your songs in last week's episode, but that was purely incidental. You brought it up.
And we also now have licensed this music as our official outro music from hitherto in forever.
Well, have you checked with Enjoy Record if they think it's okay?
Yeah, it's all good. We're all good. Don't worry about
it. I can't promise that I'm going to edit that in every week.
Oh.
The best part of this situation is that the other Seniors guys, they have no idea this is going on because we don't talk too much anymore. I mean, they don't know what I do exactly for a living, but they have no idea that on Twitter and on a podcast, people are sharing and talking about these songs. So it's quite funny.
What happens with bands all the time? It's time for your reunion tour.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna play at WWDC.
God, you could be the band. You could be the bash band.
Don't even think about it. No, each one of us, we live in a different city. Yeah, it's a typical band story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to just as well give a little piece of follow-up on emoji reactions. So 2 things on this. Rejections, as you say. We're talking about this with Jeremy last time. Sarah Perez over at TechCrunch posted an article a couple of days ago where she said, the company hasn't changed its policy on Apple emoji usage in apps, nor its enforcement, according to sources familiar with the App Store's review team processes. The policy does seem to be inconsistently enforced at times. So it seems like Apple haven't necessarily changed whatever their policy is. So the policy that was is the policy that is now. But it seems like, as usual, it's being applied strangely. And Jeremy over on the Emojipedia blog has been recording more issues of applications getting rejected, which is still happening, and also applications that have been accepted that use emoji in places where other apps have been rejected. So this is, we've kind of come to the conclusion of this, another case of just inconsistent and poorly applied rules, I guess you would maybe call them, over an app review, which is, again, just leading to people being upset.
I have another theory.
Okay.
Maybe there's someone in app review, maybe a group of people, but my theory only works if there may be 1 or 2, that something happened to them, an emoji did something to them at some point in the past, and now they've worked their way into Apple, worked their way into the App Store review team, and is their personal mission from God to get rid of emoji in UI elements in apps, Maybe they hit a thumbs up when they meant to hit a thumbs down and it ruined a relationship. Maybe they sent a black heart instead of a red heart and, caused Valentine's Day problems.
Shows that they truly hate someone. Maybe they're just a curmudgeon who doesn't like emoji, like how you two, or, well, more you, Stephen, hate my Bitmoji.
Why me?
Well,
I do hate Bitmoji very much.
So you could be, if you were in app review, you would reject all of the Bitmoji-related applications. Right? I love Bitmoji. Bitmoji is the true expression of me in stickers form now. It's wonderful.
You would think, though, what do you guys think about this? If it really is just there's a person or a couple people who are inconsistent for some reason, wouldn't Apple have a record of who reviews what? You think this would be easily fixed, right? If it is somebody just, maybe they misinterpret, a best case scenario, and I honestly believe this is what's happening. If this is the case that Sarah's reporting says Apple hasn't changed its policy, that someone on the app review team misread or misunderstood a rule, right? And so they made decisions that were out of that faulty judgment, right? They made a mistake, and that mistake got pushed onto some developers, which is really crappy, but they're fixing it. Wouldn't Apple be able to fix that relatively quickly? And it happened in these 2 apps that got reviewed in the same day, but we went to this person, let's call him John, and so we said, John, no, this is fine. It would be over, but it's still kind of a thing. I wonder what that process looks like internally on that team.
I don't. It's I don't understand why it can't be taken care of, right? Or why could there not be a meeting in the morning and they're just we just need to confirm how emoji works. You know what I mean? I agree with you. It's why. I don't understand why this type of stuff can't be changed, which does lead me to believe that there is something going on and it's just being poorly applied. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Somebody called me a socialist because I argued, last week on the show I said, I don't get it why such a huge corporation like Apple cannot, allow developers to use emoji like they would be some, iconography, like a UI element. And somebody basically along the lines of, this is about copyright law, unless you're a socialist and you think everything should be free and allowed to be used by everyone. And I don't think that's my argument.
Wow.
Yeah, some people have thoughts. I don't think that's my argument. I think My problem is that, in a way, when I see developers using emoji to adorn their UIs, I wonder if, in a way, that use of emoji is helping some developers who may not have the resources to, hire a designer and create icons to make prettier, nicer applications than they would be otherwise without emoji. And so I wonder, why does the corporation with 200 and plus billions in the bank go against the indie developers who's using a stock trend emoji in his application?
Or I wonder, it also maybe even help with like localization, right? Like if you've got to have all these different strings, and if your UI works in a way that emoji can explain something, that's less translation you have to do too. Like there's lots of good reasons for it.
But I'm not saying that let's abolish copyright law and allow everybody to use Apple's emoji. That is not my argument. My argument is that on one side we have the huge corporation and emoji, and on the other we have developers making applications for the Apple platform. It's not like these developers are taking the emoji and putting them on billboards in the street. They are putting them in iPhone and iPad apps. And the fact that emoji on iOS are such high quality and people crave them and people want to use them, Apple should be proud of that instead of going against those apps and those developers. That's my argument.
But yet, we still don't know either way.
Yeah. So,
all right, let's take a break. Today's show is brought to you by Zola. Zola are reinventing the wedding planning and registry experience. From your engagement to the wedding to decorating your first home, Zola is there with compassionate customer service and modern tools and technology. The Zola registry has everything you love about your favorite department store, plus extras like honeymoon funds, fitness classes, the ability to buy wine subscriptions for people, and so much more. They have over 500 top brands and 50,000 gifts, experiences, and cash funds to choose from, making it easy for you and your guests. They even have top-rated apps for iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch so couples can manage their registries on the go. I am getting married this year. And wedding registry stuff has been an interesting part of my life. I've looked around Zola, and it is an amazing service. Unfortunately, it is not available in the UK, which makes me very sad because it is awesome. It is everything that we were looking for with a wedding registry. The ability to add in things that we want people to buy for us, plus the ability to have cash funds as well for honeymoons and things like that is amazing. We did get to try it out because Zola hooked me up with a credit and we were able to purchase something for ourselves. We have some lovely artwork now from Zola because you can go in and not only buy physical gifts, but you can buy gift cards and stuff like that for people that can be redeemed digitally. It's really awesome. Basically, if you are planning a wedding, you know how hard and stressful and tough it can be. And it's really nice to have a service like Zola that can take one of these things away from you having to worry about. Over 300,000 couples have already used Zola, and there's good reason for it. You can join them today to sign up and receive a $50 credit toward your registry, which is, again, everyone likes money at this point in their lives because this stuff's super expensive. Just go to Zola.com/connected. That's ZOLA.com/connected to receive that $50 credit when you sign up. We'd like to thank Zola for their support of this show. So, HomePod. It is HomePod time. They have arrived. We all have them. Federico's was lovingly brought for him from an undisclosed location through Europe and all the way over into Italy. I want to get your first impressions on it. Stephen, what are your kind of overall feelings about HomePod?
Oh, you left off the article when you said it. That makes me sad.
Yeah, I noticed when I did it. I said about HomePod and not about the HomePod. But in that instance,
that's how fancy people talk, Mike.
It felt right. I was following the official marketing guidelines. You know,
it's a mind virus. I mean, I don't think my thoughts are particularly unique. It does sound good. It has. I was talking to Jason Snell about this. It has a very strong philosophy about how things should sound. There's a section on yesterday's episode of Query that Serenity talks about this as well, that the HomePod has an opinion about how your music should sound. And for the most part, the types of music I listen to, at least, it sounds really good. But there are certain circumstances where the processing that it does is kind of weird, where like things that you think should go to the tweeters go to the sub, and it gets muddy or weird or whatever. But I like it as a speaker. I like the way that it sounds. Again, for the type of music I enjoy. The Siri stuff's not great, but we can get into that. I did pit it against iPod Hi-Fi because I like to make as relevant as content as I can for my YouTube channel.
You're the person, right? Like, that is what I expected from you. If you would have given me any other type of video, I think I would have been upset.
So I did that. So you can go see how it compares to the 12-year-old iPod Hi-Fi. I had totally forgotten the iPod Hi-Fi was so close to the original iPhone launch. It feels like an eternity before the iPhone, but it really wasn't. And the HomePod just blows it away. I mean, it's a lot newer, obviously, and a lot smarter. And much smaller, which is nice too. I don't think people realize how big the iPod Hi-Fi is until you see a picture of it with an iPod on top of it.
It's huge. It's massive.
It's massive. It's massive. But it was fun to compare the two. It's always an experience to publish something on YouTube with a mistake in it and then get called out by commenters, which is fun. I complained that the power cable was not removable, but the news broke after I published that it is removable.
Though, really, like you can yank it out.
It is removable.
Right? Yeah.
It is removable. It is not replaceable. Like,
it's like saying, the front cover, like all that foam, that's removable too if you remove it.
Yeah. It's not like a 2-prong or 3-prong like thing that just plugs into it. So I stand by my complaint that if you damage that cord, you're in trouble. And Apple will replace the cord for $29. But if you damage the HomePod itself, it's basically you just got to buy a new one, as expensive as the damage repair is. So most of the comments are about that, despite me pinning a comment saying it and having it in the description. People just don't read.
It's too late. You said it in the video.
That's pleasant. So yeah, I think that's how I feel about it. It's a good speaker. I use Apple Music. I like Apple Music, so it fits in with me in that regard. But it's not as smart as the Amazon Echo is. What do you think?
Yeah. So I like HomePod. Oh no, I cannot do this. I wanted to do a full sentence without. I cannot bring myself to this. So I like it. I got it a couple of days ago, and I should say that I still haven't tried the high volume, like anything above 40%, because my dogs are easily scared, and by like loud bass and just high volume in general. And I still didn't have a good moment to just sit by myself and listen to loud music. So for what I've listened to so far at like 30 to 40%, I think it's totally fine. It sounds really good. I don't think it's mind-blowing at this kind of volume. I don't think it's room-filling in the way that people make it out to be, but I think it also highly depends on the kind of configuration that you have. I have a really small kitchen and living room space. It's a really small room. We live in a small apartment. I don't have like the kind of front room that you have, Mike. It's really like half of that, I think. I'm not able to appreciate how room filling it sounds because there's not enough room to fill, basically, is my problem. Right now it's sitting against a wall behind my TV, because that's the only place that I have. I wanted to put it where the Echo used to be, but it's too wide for that space. So because it's also the space where my modem is, so there's not enough room there. I think it sounds okay. I still haven't tried the loud volume thing. I love the way that Siri talks. I think it's really, it's a really nice voice, if that makes sense. And the animation on top is fine, even though I don't always see the animation because, again, it's behind the TV. So I only see the LEDs light up when I'm like washing the dishes and I turn and I talk to Siri, then I see the HomePod. I think it's fine. The only surprise for me was how heavy it is. It is heavier. Heavy. It's hefty. I was not expecting it to be... it's compact, it's dense. But overall, as basically everybody has said, this is what I was expecting, and it's nice. It integrates nicely with iOS and the iPhone. So I replaced the Echo with it. We'll see how it goes. But, It's going well so far, even though I'm not like screaming in surprise, oh my god, this is the way that music sounds, because as I said, my room is small and I still haven't tried high volumes.
No, I was gonna say it gets very, very loud. I turned it to 100% in my studio, which is 200 square feet, and it's too loud. They need to rein that in a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this on Upgrade. Like, I would love to have an ability to cap it so I have more range to turn it up and down, because I'm really keeping it like in the lower 30% of the volume, and I don't really need it to go any more than that, so I would like to be able to like move it more freely than I currently can. I would say that I am more impressed by the audio than you two. I feel like there's like a sliding scale between us. Like, I love it. I think the audio sounds amazing. And again, like I will say, I think I said this last week, like I don't have a good enough understanding for how speaker technology works, nor could I really. I mean, like, Stephen, you were talking about like the tweeters and stuff. Like, I couldn't even, or like it gets muddy, right? Like you used that phrase. Like, I don't know. I can't conceive what that means for speakers. Like, I don't think I have that thing where I can like pick out all of the different ways that something sounds, right? Like, I don't think I have that. But what I do know is that this is the best speaker that I've ever owned, and I love the way that music sounds on it. I love the way that the spatial stuff works. Like, I was listening to Hamilton, and the lyrics, like the vocals, they're like closer to me than the rest of the music, and I love the way it makes that sound space. And for me, like, it totally does fill the room, and I've been really impressed with that. We have it located nicely in the middle of the room, like it's right in the center of the room, and it does a great job of filling everything. And I've been really happy with it. And I find the microphones to be very good, right? It picks that sort of stuff up very well. The fact that it can just hear literally anybody say the phrase has been difficult, especially when trying to watch HomePod review videos. That was a real mess.
I had my video. I set a lot of people's HomePods off of my video. I ran into it when I was editing the video, and actually like unplugged the thing. It didn't cross my mind that this isn't like a Ahoy telephone on my iPhone where it's been trained, because this is. And we're going to get into the software, even though very little of it is designed as if anyone lives with any other human being ever. It is designed to listen to anyone who talks to it. And sorry about that. It was too late to do anything about it.
But I mean, this is the same if like people do Amazon Echo videos or whatever. But like I haven't watched an Amazon Echo video in a while. So, this is what it is. What do you guys think about the way that the HomePod integrates with the Home app? It feels like it's kind of just nothing.
Can I go ahead, Steven?
Yes.
I think I don't want to say a mess, but I think Apple should really rethink the way that the Home app is designed and make the HomePod a special area or kind of widget in the Home app, because right now my main problem with the Home app on iOS is the fact that it's so easy to confuse things. Like, everything looks the same. Different types of accessories look like everything is a square or a rectangle, and the HomePod is just another rectangle. It doesn't have any special controls. Like, it's not like a mini player as I would have expected. It's just a square, and you tap it and you play and pause music. And the main problem with the Home app is that, to an extent, I feel like it was sort of designed when Apple wanted to demo 3D Touch and tell people, look how fancy we can be with all these interactions and these long presses, and you navigate into this settings screen, and you have multiple layers of the interface. But in practice, and especially now that I'm adding more and more HomeKit stuff to my devices, I can see why people think it's confusing, because everything looks the same, and every control that you want to have, available at your fingertips requires long press or a 3D touch, and you need to go into these nested detail views. And the same is true for the HomePod. Like, for example, I was looking for the personal request setting. I was like, okay, maybe I need to tap, I need to 3D touch on the HomePod square, and I go into the details, because that's how settings work for other HomeKit devices. I can go in there and see the settings, and I will find personal requests. But no, it's not there. You need to tap like an arrow icon, and then you need to tap your profile picture, and you will find the personal requests option for the HomePod. Like, it's totally unintuitive. And I think the bigger picture here is that I think Apple should redesign the Home app, and for the HomePod, which is a special device because it's made by Apple, there should be an interactive kind of control or widget in the Home app that sort of mimics what you would see in Control Center, which is another problem, the way that you need to navigate multiple audio output devices in Control Center. But I would say that I think it's confusing the way that it works right now, and there should be a better, a new interface that makes each device unique. Like a motion sensor and a light switch and the HomePod all look the same right now in the Home app, and I don't think that is good design.
You mentioned the personal requests. Are you like, this is the thing where it's named so peculiarly anyway. This is the thing where you can have your messages, reminders, and notes. Definitely not calendar. What are you, crazy? Why would you want calendar integration? Definitely don't have that. But the three things that it does do, Apple warns you when you're setting it up, right? Yeah. As we were talking about last week, because you may basically anyone can read your messages if your phone is on the same Wi-Fi network. Are you going to leave that on?
I have left it on because for two reasons. One of them, which I don't have secrets. I don't talk to a lot of people on iMessage. I basically talk to you guys, my parents, and my girlfriend. And like, if somebody, it's extremely rare that someone is home and I'm not. But if one of my friends would come to my house and talk to my HomePod, they would have to worry about my reaction, not, like, I wouldn't allow people to talk to the HomePod. Also, the fact that I live in Italy, like, it's not normal for my friends to come over and start talking in English to my HomePod. And finally, Sylvia couldn't be bothered to interact with the HomePod and Siri. Like, she doesn't care. She doesn't like it. She thinks I'm crazy with all these assistants and these voice controls. So I'm in a unique position that all the people I care about do not talk in English and do not care about the technology that I use. So personal requests is not a problem for me.
I've left it on because I turned it on and then mostly forgot about it. Because I'm not saying that that's the right thing for everyone to do, but like, the HomePod doesn't alert you when you have a message, right? So really, it is the case of somebody coming into my house and asking for the HomePod to read my messages, because I kind of don't care if Adina could do it. Like, I understand, like, I really get it. Like, trust me, I 100% get it. Like, if that's not a thing that you want in your home with your family or whomever for like whatever reason, like, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Just everyone's different, right? Like, in the same way that like some people share their passcodes and stuff like that, and like some people are private, some people are not private. Like, it's your own personal circumstances. But for me, it's not something that I worry about, but it's also not something that I really think I'm ever going to use, because like, I have devices surrounding me at all times which have my notifications on them. So I don't think I'm really going to use this feature, but it's there, and I think that Apple should do something to try and make it authenticated in some at least minimal way by voice, right? So trying to recognize different voices. I think it's an oversight, but it's fine that it... I mean, honestly, my biggest annoyance is the fact that it can't even look at my calendar. Like, that is mind-boggling to me. I'm more annoyed about that than I am the personal requests thing in general.
I want to say, though, because I think it sounded like I was sort of down on the HomePod. I think I absolutely love the fact that I have an Echo with Siri, in the sense that I have this Siri device that it's in my living room / kitchen. Like even though I haven't been able to fully absorb the sound especially because of the dogs, because they're really scared by loud music. I love the fact that I can control HomeKit devices, like native devices that I have, accessories that I have installed in my house, and I can also control on iOS. And the fact that I can easily ask to play music from my Apple Music account. I absolutely love the fact that Siri is now like this presence in my living room, but I'm keeping an asterisk on sound quality about, for when I will be able to, maybe tonight, I don't know, when I will be able to test the actual full volume. That I wanted to specify that because, then it's going to become a meme that Federico is against the HomePod.
I'm just going to say, I recommend don't test the full volume at night. It's bad time,
you mean for the neighbors? There's a
Federico, it's really loud.
I would only do it for loud. 10 seconds, not
okay, but
2 hours.
Just, go for it, right? Even test it for 10 seconds. Your neighbors are gonna notice. All I will people are gonna know.
There's a dispute with the guy downstairs anyway, so it's good to establish, who's got the loudest speaker.
Who's loudest? So let's talk about Siri, right? I'll say just super quick, because it's not really worth going into. The HomeKit stuff that I've used works. I can turn my lights on and off. It works, right? Same way that it works on my phone is fine. Let's talk about Siri. So research firm Loop Ventures, this is Gene Munster's firm. So, they tested some responses across all smart speakers. So they got a Cortana speaker that was in a Harman Kardon thing. They have an Amazon Echo, Google Home, and the HomePod. They tested it in a bunch of categories. I'll put links in the show notes so you can go and read it. But the top line is that Google Home came out top in everything. And HomePod only did better than last place in 2 categories. One of them called local, which is, for example, where can I find a cup of coffee? So asking about local services. And another is commerce. So they used an example of help me buy some shoes. I don't really know what the HomePod can do in this area, but apparently it did a good job. Overall, Siri on the HomePod understood 99.4% of queries, but only answered 52% of them correctly. This puts Siri at the bottom overall for AI assistant performance. What do we think of that? It doesn't look good. I know that it in theory, Apple would say, right, that it doesn't HomePod doesn't support all of the things that these other services support, right? Which is why it couldn't answer the questions. But I don't think that is an excuse, though, right? I feel like it probably should.
There's
do this.
2 takeaways from this, I think. One is that Google is obviously ahead of everybody here.
Yep. Which you would expect, I think, for take a question, answer a question. Google should always be ahead.
The fact that the HomePod and Siri are behind because they do not compete in some domains is not an excuse. That's exactly the problem. That SiriKit should be expanded to support more domains, and it's been 2 years of SiriKit, and we're still limited to 6 or 7 domains, maybe more, but there's a couple that I would really be surprised if more than 1 million people use some of the more specific SiriKit domains on a monthly basis. So I think the fact that the HomePod does pretty good with Siri in the domains where it can compete, and it cannot compete in others, that's exactly the problem. Siri is mostly okay when it works, and it means that the Google intelligence is still ahead, and the domains must be expanded. So I wonder.
Well, let's talk about SiriKit not working, right? I had not a good experience trying to use even the limited set of SiriKit functionality available on the HomePod. I tried to add things to Todoist and Things. it couldn't even understand me asking. And what I think the problem is I may not have been asking in the exact wording that Siri expects, but I also don't think that I should have to have exact wording, really. I tried to send a message of airmail. It was like a long process of going through all the different Federico Vitixi's that were in my contacts, as Siri likes to call you. I don't know if you're aware of that, Federico, but
Vitixi, yeah.
Siri likes to call you Federico Vitixi.
I know.
It then resulted in there's a problem with this app, was what I got at the end of it after going through the whole process. Then I tried to use WhatsApp, and WhatsApp gave me an error 3 times in a row. The associated, the HomePod did while trying to use WhatsApp. The associated iOS device must connect to the network first. But it was 100% connected to the network. So I think that SiriKit, even in its limited function, is not working very well at all on the HomePod. Would you agree, Federico?
I can tell you that it doesn't work for me at all because I'm on the 11.3 beta, and every single SiriKit request to third-party apps, it says that I need an app installed on my phone. And I do have the app installed on my phone, but it doesn't work. And so I asked on Twitter. A bunch of people told me, yeah, I see the same issue. I'm also on 11.3 beta. It works fine on other devices on 11.2.5. So it doesn't work for me at all. I hope that in the future this will be resolved and that it will not be a thing. Like if you have a beta on your iPhone, then the HomePod will be limited, because that will be annoying.
Yeah, I would really like to see them do a better job with this, just in general. Like, the SiriKit stuff was underwhelming to begin with, just based upon what it can actually support, especially when you enter situations like, now that you have a HomePod, if you ever say the hello to Siri phrase, if it's a SiriKit function that it can't process, the HomePod will take the request, because it always seems to dominate the trigger word, right? Like, it takes all requests. And if you say ask to order a Lyft or an Uber or something, it will just tell you I can't do that, and then that's the end of your experience, which I think is pretty bad. So, like, it already kind of screwed up there initially, and then it just kind of got a little bit just a bit worse by not even doing a good job of what it can support. So yeah, not great overall.
Yeah, that's something that Amazon does really well. Like, if you ask the Echo something and it can't do it, or it needs to show you something, it says, oh, hey, open the app, and it's there. But Apple, guys, breaking news, Apple owns both the HomePod and the iPhone tech. Like, it's the same group of people. They could service that stuff on the lock screen. Like, there's so much more they could do. The HomePod is really well integrated with Apple Music, but it feels like an island when it comes to everything else. And that's just really, really frustrating from a company that says that its strength is like hardware, software, and services all working together. This is not true in this case.
Honestly, I think there should just be like SiriKit in iCloud. There should be like an API for developers who have web services to integrate with Siri.
But this is the problem. This is the problem with the privacy stuff. This is the privacy angle that Apple are going down is restricting them here, right? Because they're doing it all on device. If it's not going to work on device, it's not going to work.
What are they doing on device? Because there must be a way, the same way that they do CloudKit, for example.
Well, but then why haven't they? I mean, like, I agree with you, right? Like, it makes sense, but like, surely SiriKit is not working in the cloud, because otherwise it would be able to order a Lyft.
I think a lot of people are using, not you, but this is an argument that I see on Twitter. A lot of people use privacy as an excuse for, I don't want to say technical incompetence, but lack of
well, you know what though, but that's a good thing though, isn't it? Like me saying, oh, it's because of privacy covers up some other issues. I did just think, actually, stuff like ordering a ride sharing might need a screen, or like Apple's designed it to need a screen, and that's the reason that HomePod can't support
I do wonder,
potentially,
which is weird because Amazon can do it without a screen. Like, it's
right.
People are doing this.
It's possible to do, but I mean, like, Apple's decided implementation, which again they could change, but they haven't. Especially when you would assume that when they created the SiriKit for ride sharing, they knew that the HomePod was going to be coming. So it is all very confusing. Can I talk about timers for a minute, just for 1 minute?
Please.
We can set a 1 minute timer on it. Because I've mentioned timers a bunch, like the fact that you can't set timers, and people keep trying to send me workarounds for it. So let me just explain my situation. I set timers when I cook. I set multiple timers when I cook because I cook meals that have multiple parts to them, right? You've got the potatoes going, you've got steak going, whatever. You're making a gravy, you need timers. And that's how I like to cook. I have timers. And I ask my Echo for these timers. And I like multiple timers with names. So I can say like 10-minute potato timer, 3-minute steak timer, right? Alarms don't work for me. People said, why don't you just set alarms? And the Home app can set alarms because I want to be able to check how long I have left on a timer, which you can't do for an alarm, right? So there are times where I want to say, how long is left on this so I know whether I should start something else. Alarms don't work that way. And I don't want an app, any app, whether it's the Home app or the Clock app, to be filling up with endless entries that just say potatoes and rice on them. Like, I just don't want that because that is a bad workaround for something that is a very basic task that Apple's competitors seem to have no issue with. Like, it doesn't seem very difficult to be able to set multiple timers and then to also name them. Like, I was complaining about the Amazon Echo when it didn't have nameable timers for a long time because Google did. And now the Amazon Echo has it. I really think that this should just be something that iOS supports.
Your timer is done, Mike.
Thank you. Was that an actual time? Was that
yes.
the sound? So there you go. I've said I took my minute, and that's that. I want to ask you both about damage to wooden surfaces.
Wooden web services.
Surfaces. Damage to wooden web surface. I can't talk. Somebody else do this. I'm done. I'm leaving.
So there's a paragraph in the Wirecutter review of the HomePod that this reviewer, and it turns out a lot of the people are discovering it too, that the HomePod will leave a ring on some wooden surfaces. So in my office, the desk that it's on is like untreated pine, so there's no stain to it. It's just raw wood. It has not stained that, but our friend John at Mac Stories has stains on a piece of furniture that is coated somehow. So it's not great. Apple touted that they tested this thing in a bunch of employees' houses, which is like a thing we're just gonna accept as normal and fine. But this didn't get caught, and it really sort of blows my mind.
This feels like the perfect example of many recent Apple PR debacles, in the sense that they must have known that on some type of wooden surface it will leave, the silicone, the material would leave, the kind of ring sign. But they just didn't tell people beforehand. They waited until somebody caught it. And because this device has been in Apple employees' homes for like a couple of years at least. Let's say just 1 year though. And I mean, nobody has a brown or black or gray piece of wooden furniture. I mean, I would strongly doubt that, none of the Apple employees go to IKEA and pick up one of those, dark gray cabinets that everybody has. But rather than telling people, on the little instruction manual, like, look, it's silicone, and it might leave a ring on your, on your furniture.
And I assume that what's happening is the vibrations leaving is what's leaving the mark,
reason,
right?
Because it's happening to a bunch of people. It's happening to me in Italy. It's happening to John in Chicago. It's happening to the wire cutter person, wherever they live. So it's not like a single isolated case in Rome, Italy, or in Chicago, United States. Like, it's a thing. So just tell people. Just put a notice in the little instruction manual. Do not wait. Like, it's okay. I will put a coaster below it. It's fine. But tell me. Do not wait until you get caught.
Yeah, tell me so I can do it, right? Like,
it's fine. I understand that placing objects on furniture may leave, that kind of sign. But tell me beforehand. I'm giving you $349. You can put a little sentence in your instruction manual. Nobody would be upset. Instead, you make it a thing by not being proactive. And that I see a parallel there with the battery stuff and with all the other problems that we've seen with Apple PR, especially in the past year. Do not wait until some publication discovers this problem. It only takes a few days anyway. And then you gotta spin the narrative back in your control. That seems counterproductive to me.
I agree with everything you just said. Like, I don't have it. It's on a white surface for me, but I did have it on like a walnut TV cabinet, and I would have been really mad if it would have left a mark on that because I really like that piece of furniture. But it, it's silly. You've got to assume that they did know about it, and if they didn't, then like that's not enough testing of a device that you've been in development for 6 years, right? Like it's like, come on, like Apple make this stuff. For years, they've made this stuff, like things that go on other surfaces. I don't know. It's silly. It's really silly because then it becomes a big story, right? Like then it becomes a big thing because it's Apple. And if you can, now there's going to be, right, like you're going to go on Facebook and there's going to be a bunch of articles that are like, the big flaw in the HomePod, right? Like, the thing Apple doesn't want you to know, cover up, like silicone destroys child. Like, it's going to, it's going to be everywhere now. And it's like, I don't understand your PR strategy if you let this stuff happen to you.
Anyway.
So there we go.
I do wonder... how it happened. There's a funny tweet saying that none of Apple's press release photos have the HomePod on a wood surface, which just cracks me up. But yeah, I do wonder that they think about this in like a proactive way versus a reactive way, like you said. It's not... Now they don't control it. And, at the end of the day, this is not necessarily a huge deal until someone puts it on like some antique piece of furniture that their great-grandmother brought over, it's like someone's going to have something expensive ruined, and then it's going to be bad and sad for that person. I just don't know. It's not what I expected to be talking about today when I woke up. I didn't think this would be the story.
There's like some things from Apple where they're just like, oh, just retreat the Surface. It's like, okay, thank you, great. So I would say, in case there's any question, I'm keeping my HomePod because I love it. It's the best speaker I've ever owned, and I love listening to music
so
on it.
You've gone
awesome.
from not wanting to buy the HomePod to being skeptical.
So here's the thing. I was thinking about this. You guys are both a bit like, I don't know, and you were looking forward to it. I didn't want it, right? So I had no expectations. I had none. So all it needed to do was be barely passable, and it was going to surpass what I want, like my expectation from it. Right, like everything I thought about the HomePod that would be bad is bad, and I didn't know just how good the audio was going to be. So it's better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say I'm super happy. My Echo is gone. Like we removed all the Echo stuff. We're just using.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I was trying to tell you, I love the HomePod. I'm not blown away like some people make it out to be by this audio at 40%. But I love it. It works very well. It's a fine product, despite the ring on my furniture that I hope Sylvia doesn't notice. But it's fine.
Is it able to do everything from like an audio perspective that your Echo was doing for you? Like all the skills and all that sort of stuff are taken care of?
It hears me better than the Echo. And because I'm not using like Todoist anymore, like that's not a problem, and in fact I could argue that it's even better in terms of like music playback, because Sylvia and I share many playlists on Apple Music, so there's an easier way to shuffle those playlists. For example, like the sentence is shorter and I can play Sylvia's own playlists that I have on Apple Music but I don't have on Spotify, and I want to wait until the 11.3 beta gets the Siri Kit fix, so I can also use Things or other apps that I have with Siri integration. So it's
Well, I mean, you're assuming that it is a problem.
Oh yes, I am assuming that. Yes.
I'm not on 11.3.
And it doesn't work.
And I'm having all those problems. I'm on 11.25, and it's not working.
In a distant future, it'll work.
In another timeline.
Yeah, and that's sort of like the. I mean, I'm gonna keep it. I don't know if it's gonna replace the Echo in our kitchen. That's where our HomePod is right now. Making my family live with it for a while, because everything but the timers it does, it may just do them worse than the Echo did, but it sounds really good, and maybe that's a trade-off because we use ours for music a lot. I just think this is a very interesting product because the hardware, other than this destroying antique pieces of furniture business, is like really solid. Like it sounds really good, it looks really nice. I've got the white one. I think everyone else that I know got the space gray one, but I think both look nice. All that is like a win, but it sort of folds into the narrative that we have of Apple software is sort of a dollar short and a day late on a lot of things. And I think the line of, well, it's been in development for 6 years or however long, 8 years, 100 years, and so it was never really designed to compete with voice assistants. Like, that's like too bad. It does. Like, a person who wants to spend between $200 and $500 on a speaker, they're all going to have some sort of voice assistant at this point. When you compare this to the Google Home Max or the Sonos One or the Sonos Play 5, this doesn't hold up on the voice assistant end of things. And Apple waving its hand saying, no, it's a speaker and we just threw this stuff in, like, that's like, I just don't buy it. Like, that's, you can say what you want to say, you can repeat what Apple PR says, and I understand their point of view, right? Because they want to compete on, it sounds really good. And from that perspective, they seem, from people who have listened to a bunch of these things, seem to be doing very well. But the fact is, it is a voice is a voice assistant in a canister, and people are going to judge it against what Amazon and Google are doing. And there, Apple is behind. And
you can't have your cake and eat it.
Right.
You can't just be like, oh, we put Siri in it, but like, don't compare us.
Don't compare it to other things because we really didn't do it. Blah blah blah. Like, it just doesn't.
It was an accident. Siri fell into it.
Yeah, the top was open and Siri was
Siri
drunk and
jumped
just
in.
like
going to
Yeah,
it's like
and-
going to a marathon dressed up like an athlete, but say, no, I'm not running in the marathon. I'm just here. I'm just chilling.
I'm just standing by.
yeah, no, that's totally what it's like, and I find that narrative extremely frustrating because, like, we can let products compete for what they are, and it's okay if Apple doesn't always win those competitions, but some people can't stomach that. But to answer your question, before I went off on that rant, we're going to keep ours. I don't know where it will live in our lives. This may end up that we keep the Echo in the kitchen, and maybe this is in the living room, just like for music. I don't really know. But it does everything my Echo did for us. I don't have a lot of custom stuff, a lot of third-party skills on my Echo. Most of it is home stuff. And since my very first smart plug I put in my house a couple years ago, the only things I've added work with both Amazon and HomeKit. Like, I've done that very much on purpose with an eye, cut towards today where the HomePod is a thing. So we'll see how it goes. I think this is a product we have to live with. I think we have to let Apple live with it. I think we have to let Apple work on it and improve it. But I'm telling you guys, like, if we're here in a year and
oh man, if
still...
If we're okay,
if the world still exists in a
okay.
year and the HomePod is still basically what it is today, like, if they're not aggressively updating this thing in the near future, then I think they've missed the boat. Yeah. I'm willing to give them a little ground now, but and this is just writing off AirPlay 2 and multi-room stuff, which they've failed to ship. But things like calendar support, like if you turn on personal requests, it can't see your calendar. Like, that's just so bad. So I think they've got to get on the ball with evolving it, and I think that's going to be the story of the HomePod moving forward. Is okay at launch, like, it sounds really good, but it's not a great smart assistant. Can they actually improve that? And is it going to be every year at WWDC the HomePod gets better? Like, too late for that, Apple. Like, they've got to be on the ball updating this on a regular basis.
All right, let's take a break and thank our second sponsor for this week, which is the fine folk over at Anchor. Anchor is the fastest and easiest way for anyone to make a podcast. If you have a thing that you want to say, you have opinions that you want to get out into the world, maybe you want to share your story of the HomePod leaving a ring on your kitchen countertop. All you need to do is download the Anchor app from the App Store, set it up. You don't need a mobile recording rig. You just take your phone, you put it to your ear, you talk into it. Then Anchor takes care of the rest. It is super simple, very nicely done. There's a bunch of great tools. You can add music in. You can add call-ins. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. There's so much cool stuff. It can create little transcripts for you of the things that you're speaking about, so you can share them on social media. The app is really, really sweet. Anchor is also a cool social network. You can follow people, call into stations, leave questions, and listen to some of your favorite people share their thoughts with you right from within the app. It's very easy to do. I've been using Anchor a bunch recently to do some AMA stuff. So if you go to anchor.fm/Mike Hurley, that is anchor.fm/Mike Hurley, you can find out more about Anchor itself, and you can follow me there as well. And you can sign up, and if you call into my station, you can leave me an audio message, and I'll play back some of the best ones and give my answers to your questions. I've been really enjoying doing this over the last few weeks, so go and sign up and try it out. The application itself is really nicely made. I love the fact that there's emoji all over the place. It's super cool. So go to anchor.fm/Mike Hurley to check it out and leave me an AMA question. Anchor are a really cool company. They're doing some awesome stuff. And keep your eye out for that. They're doing some pretty sweet stuff right now. Thanks to Anchor for their support of this show. Good old Mark Gurman's back with an interesting report. This one is very old school Mark Gurman, full of tons of little details.
And it's a solo byline. It's not the hand-holding Bloomberg has had to do for him for so long. Remember, it was always like, people familiar with the matter may say, or like, we believe. Like, this is like old school Gurman.
It's a little bit more, yeah. And I would assume that this might be part of the fact he got promoted recently, right? He's taken over the beat, I think, in most, basically all of it. Anyway, so I'm going to read some of the stuff to you. We're going to stop and talk about it where we want to. So Gurman is further reporting that Apple will be debuting new features for iOS 12, but the main focus will be on stability, which is stuff that's been spoken about over the last couple of weeks. But what's new in this report is he's actually talking about what's in and what's out for iOS 12. So he talks about Project Marzipan again. This is the idea that apps will be able to work on macOS and iOS, right? So which is probably going to be, I think the way that we're expecting it is that iOS apps can work on the Mac, right? Like that's the way it's going to go around is how we're expecting it. This feels like it's going to be the big thing at WWDC, right? Like this feels like one of the reasons they might be able to hold back on some iOS 12 stuff is because they're going to debut this crazy new way of developing applications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I assume that will be...
it would be blockbuster.
Yeah. Like everybody will be talking about that.
I mean, I can already imagine the frenzied conversations I will have with developers afterwards, right? Like I can imagine how people will just be going like, oh, imagine all the new things I can do, right? Like people I think are going to be really excited about it. And for the developer conference would totally just knock everything out of the park, right? No matter what they would debut in iOS 12, if they're debuting this as well, everything else will get forgotten about, right? Because this will be a huge change, good and bad. There are a lot of ramifications with it. Digital health tool is something that will be coming to iOS 12. Basically, this is an application that will allow for parents to monitor how much children use their devices. I've been mostly ignoring a lot of the stuff around this recently because I just kind of don't care about it. But like, there's a lot of hand-wringing about how much children should be able to use devices.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm assuming that of all of us, you are the one who has followed this news the closest because you actually have kids.
It's true.
Or like it rings true to you in some way. What is your thinking around this?
Yeah, so the story has been, Apple has been approached by people saying, you need better management tools for this. And like already, like as an aside, iOS and macOS to a lesser degree, but iOS in particular has really good parental controls already. Like you can really lock down an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod Touch for use by kids. And they say they're going to improve that, which is great. They should be improving it all the time. And they have been on a pretty regular basis. Those tools get easier to use and easier to manage, but more powerful. So I think Apple's done a better job than anyone else already. The idea that I'm going to try to choose my words very carefully, that I need help monitoring how much my kids are using their devices. Like I don't think I personally need that, but I recognize that my kids are still pretty young and that they don't have access to a device without my wife or I handing it to them. Like they don't have their own phones. We have a couple iPad minis, but we can, if they're using it, it's because I've handed it to them. However, just because I don't necessarily feel like I need this tool doesn't mean it's not important. I think there are a lot of kids who do have their own devices or have a situation where they have more alone time than my kids have. I work at home and my wife stays at home. So like we're always around. And a lot of kids, including myself growing up, had a lot more parent free time after school and stuff. And so I think it's good. I think it's a good addition to iOS. I think they've proven that they can write these sorts of tools in a way that you don't have to be a tech podcaster or writer to understand how to use them, right? Like a lot of my friends locally have kids as well, and we talk about this sort of stuff, and all of them are using this, and they've all done it without me helping them. They've figured it out on their own because Apple has done a good job at laying these tools out. So I assume that this will be a similar type thing, where it's easy to maintain, and maybe they're going to have some remote access stuff. Like one thing I would really like to see in this is if you're using iCloud family sharing, that give me as a parent in the iCloud family, let me do some of this stuff remotely, right? So if if my kid isn't at home and they need access to something, that they can ask and I can grant it, just how they do with purchases and in-app purchases now. Like build on that and make this more of an interactive tool where I don't set it and forget it, but I have an opportunity to dialogue with my children about it. So for me personally, I don't feel like I need it at this point. I probably will in the future, but I think a lot of families do want this. And so I think it's good that Apple's addressing it.
I hope that digital health is just a term that Mark Gurman
not a great
is using.
name.
I don't like it. Because I don't like the implications in a name like that, like that it is unhealthy.
No, I think it's just
like
going to be
inherently unhealthy.
I just see this being another top level category in parental controls. Like I don't think this gets its own brand. I think it's just he has to call it something. I don't think this is like a thing like with a marketing name.
We're just gonna call it screen time with with its whole one word and
camel case.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? That is probably what they would... Like, if they're going to do some kind of limiting stuff or allow you to, as you say, like, to have some kind of remote access, screen time would probably what they call it. Animoji, more characters, better navigation, whatever that means. I don't 100% know what that means. Like, redesign of the Messages app. Honestly, I hope it means breaking it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I like this. It felt like a throwaway line, and I was like, my brain exploded. And then he explained it. Like, so Mark Gurman says they will come to the iPad, and I was like, what? How? And then follows it up with apparently Apple was working on new hardware with Face ID. So my question, if at WWDC they announced that they're coming to the iPad, will we probably see new iPads at WWDC?
That's the hope.
Like, you can't say Face ID is coming to the iPad without confirming.
No.
Well, it could be one of those things where people, Steve Trout-Smith spelunks and finds it in iOS 12, and then we see iPads in the fall.
Of course. Mm-hmm. That is, of course,
that's how it goes.
A way it could happen. Yeah. But what I mean is they can't on stage say
of course not.
It's coming to the iPad
right.
without, because what they would say is it's coming to our new iPad in the fall, which they probably announced at some point during the presentation.
I mean, maybe.
And one that I am very excited about, and like a real good logical next step for it, is to integrate it into FaceTime, which is awesome. That will be so much fun, but I'm concerned my phone will turn into just a ball of flame.
So you say that. Are you using Animoji now? Like, when's the last time you sent one?
I send them every now and then, but like...
When's the last time you FaceTime video chatted with somebody?
Whenever I travel.
That has to be pretty frequent. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I travel, I FaceTime video.
That's the only time I ever use it.
And you do it. But like it's a great... I mean, I don't know. Like if you're on so here's my thinking on this, right? Why I think this would be fun. I'm not going to use it that much, but I will use it, right? But if you are on a video call with someone... Just looking at each other's faces over like half an hour, if you're going to do a call like that, like there's not a lot going on. It might be fun to like be a panda for 20 seconds, right? Like, I don't know. It feels like a nice addition to it. Animoji is mostly a selling tool like of the device. And so anything you can do there is good. I like playing around with it every now and then. I send maybe one a month, right? Like video or sticker. But that works fine for me. There are still an emoji that if they added, I would use more. So like the nerd face emoji is my emoji of choice. If I could use that as an emoji, I would use that basically every time instead of using the nerd emoji, right? Like in messages, I would make my own face as the nerd emoji and use that. I don't know. But Animoji is what it is. It is like a fun little tech demo for the iPhone 10. and it will be for the iPad. I think they should continue expanding it because it's got a lot of brand cachet for them now. Because it's theirs. That's Apple's. Talk about emoji earlier, right? An emoji is Apple's, and you're going to see Android device makers try and do this.
My question is, if we get Face ID on the iPad, how does it work? In the sense, do we get one true depth camera system that works in both orientations and it's got like a wider angle?
Yes.
Or do we get two cameras, one on each side?
No, one.
I think it's
one camera, and they've worked out how to do it, because two cameras is terrible, because then you need four?
I think it's one. And it's got a wider angle and it works in landscape.
Yeah, it has to be one or it's four, right? Because you'd need one on every single side. So all orientations, you have to affix the orientation problem. So, which I expect that they will have. A new stocks app. Don't understand why.
Bitcoin, man. Don't you want to check the Bitcoins?
That was the only thing I was thinking about, right? And I was expecting Mark to say it, but adding cryptocurrency support to the stocks app is the only thing that I can assume they're doing, because why would you make a new stock app?
It's pretty iOS 70 in there. I don't know.
Yeah, but who's using it that really needs it? Don't you just get a good app? I figure
stocks?
it's for cryptocurrency. It's cryptocurrency. It's got to be, man. It's got to be. In Silicon Valley, of course, they're all trading cryptocurrency, right?
It'll be sad when all that goes away.
We'll see. More options to Do Not Disturb. Great. Good. I want those. Yes. I don't know what they are. I don't care. I just want them. Multiplayer AR games is interesting. I don't really know what that would look like yet. I guess multiple devices all sharing in a space, and there's a dinosaur. That could be cool, right? Multiple.
I've got it. Do you remember 2013? They had the car racing demo that opened WWDC. Do we all remember this?
Anki Drive.
What if for 2018, to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of whatever that was, it's just some people on stage with iPads pointing them at the floor, and the cars are now inside the AR app.
What if, I'm going to double that, what if there's people on stage, the same people from 5 years ago, and in AR, they relive that demo fail on stage? They look at the old demo.
I'm going to go in a different direction with my what if.
Okay.
What if the multiplayer AR is built into the stocks app and we can all simultaneously look at how Bitcoin is crashing and just walk around the chart ourselves?
That's really good.
That's really sad.
So there's many options here. And also the last thing that Mark reports as a feature for iOS 12 is deeper integration for Siri and search.
I mean, okay, so is this
that means.
Siri in Spotlight, which means you can text to Siri? That sounds like it.
I know that you like that. I know you want that. You've set up your whole Rube Goldberg machine to get that working. So that's iOS 12, I guess, in a nutshell, what we know.
At what point, to back up a second, at what point does Spotlight just become Siri search?
Yeah.
Now, I feel like now it should be.
The only difference is I type to one and speak to the other, and that's a stupid distinction. It feels like even on the Mac, in my upper right-hand corner, I've got my username, I have the little Spotlight magnifying glass, I have the little Siri thing. Those really should just be one thing. And it feels like they're pushing towards that, so maybe that's what this is. Maybe it is just kind of becoming one.
Yeah, I feel like that has to happen eventually, because especially when type to Siri exists, because type, then what's the difference, right? It just gets so messy, and Spotlight is not a brand that needs to exist anymore, right? Siri is a stronger brand. You may as well just switch it over to the other one.
Yeah.
All right, so as well as the stuff that is in, Mark Gurman reported on the stuff that is out for iOS 12 to move on to another year, and also talking about the new kind of new idea, what Apple is trying to do here, what they're trying to achieve with this. But before we get to that, let me talk to you about SaneBox. I bet that every person listening to this show not only receives a lot of email, but has something that they don't like about it. That's why you need to try SaneBox. It would be amazing if there was just an easy way for all email to be dealt with individually, but it can't be, because all email looks the same. There is stuff that will arrive in your inbox that looks the same as important stuff. Bad stuff, good stuff, it all just arrives in one big pipe, one big mess. Wouldn't it be wonderful if something could just get in between all of that and sort it for you? Imagine that wonderful world. This is what SaneBox does for you. SaneBox will sort through your email and move trivial stuff to different folders, so the only messages that are in your inbox are the ones that you need and the ones that you want. And this all works seamlessly with your current system with any application. One of my favorite features about SaneBox is called the black hole. Something happened in my life a few years ago in that my email address seems to be on lists that I can't get away from, lists that I can't unsubscribe to because my email address is somehow being shared with PR people, and there's nothing that I can do about it. What happens is people email me, and then they'll email me about 6 more times over the course of 2 weeks to make sure that I got the previous email. Now, with SaneBox, I drag that person to the black hole, and I will never receive an email from them ever again. It is wonderful. I love it. SaneBox will also let you set up email reminders. It will let you snooze your email, and even just do things like sorting out newsletters into one folder for you, so you can just come to them at your own. Like, I have a bunch of newsletters that I subscribe to, but I tend to read that stuff on the weekend. And sometimes, if it arrives in the week, then I might archive it because I've got 20,000 emails in my inbox. But now with SaneBox, it just goes into a folder for me and I can pick it up when I need it. It's really awesome. To help you get a little more organization in your inbox, we've worked with SaneBox to get you a great deal. Just go to sanebox.com/connected and you'll get a 2-week free trial and a $25 credit just because you listen to this show. That is SaneBox, sanebox.com/connected. Check it out today and get your email finally under control. You don't need to enter any credit card information unless you decide to buy, so there's nothing to lose. Again, that is sanebox.com/connected. Okay, so as well as the things that are in iOS 12, these are some of the things that have been moved. A redesigned home screen. So that is probably going to go out for iOS 13, probably. Redesigned CarPlay, revamped Photos app, and big enhancements for the iPad will not occur until 2019. Some of these include the ability to run several windows in one application in a tab structure like on macOS, or to have 2 screens of the same app side by side, and also new Apple Pencil features. Federico, what do you think about the fact that we may not see iPad features until 2019?
I think I was sort of expecting it, and I'm sad. But if it's the kind of year that we just need to wait and cross our fingers, because it means that iOS will be more stable, will be faster, will be like a better experience for everybody. We can suffer through this together, I think, and it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be better next year. I think it's necessary. It's at this point I wouldn't want to like, this is not ideal for me. This is not what I wanted, but I also want to see people not be upset with iOS 11 with bugs and with crashes and with UI glitches. So I don't like it. I'm not happy, but I will be if Apple's strategy works out. So, what can I say? I'm not ecstatic about this, Mike. But if it means that in 2019 everybody's happier and every iPad works better and is faster, then so be it. That's my takeaway, I guess. I mean, yeah.
So here's my thinking on this. I was pretty much already expecting that like big iPad features were going to come every 2 years now, because that's kind of been it's not a trend. Like, it happened once and then there was 2 years and it happened again, and my expectation would be that that's what we would see. And I don't mind this so much as long as the features get revised upon and fixed where they need to be fixed, because that didn't really happen in 10. So I hope that in iOS 12 there are bug fixes and revisions to the stuff that was introduced in 11. It also doesn't bother me if the version of iOS that comes next brings with it features that are useful on the iPad as well. I feel like iOS 10 didn't really have much in it anyway for anyone. It wasn't actually an incredibly exciting release for, like, it had messages stuff. Like, that was kind of it, really. Like, it wasn't a really big iOS release. So as long as the features that we get, and it looks like some of that stuff would have, good implications for the iPad, but the thing that makes me the most excited, and one of the reasons that I'm not concerned about this, is the implication of this iOS and Mac cross-platform development stuff could be really freaking good for the iPad. Because the types of interfaces that will work best on the Mac are bigger screen interfaces. So I believe that if people adopt this, the iPad will get stronger. iPad software will get stronger because there will be two types of devices that these applications will work well on, the iPad and the Mac. And I think that if this is embraced by the community, it will be good for the iPad.
Especially because I think, like, if this framework, whatever it is, if this technology can inform software design the other way around, like not just bringing iPhone apps to the Mac, but bringing some of the Mac features and the Mac paradigms to the iPad, for example. Because now you have a shared system to make one app that works everywhere. And as you say, it's obvious to imagine that, you know, some developers are going to make iPad apps that run on a Mac, and iPad apps will get better in return because now you have this developer community that can work together with these two platforms. And so this rumor, for example, that the iPad is gaining the tabbed feature from Sierra, I think, and also it's gaining the split view for a single app, like Safari already has one, for example. That's great, and that's the kind of feature that you see on a Mac first, and it makes sense for the iPad, especially the big models, because it's also a big screen. And so instead of making fun of, oh, now I'm going to see Instagram on the tiny Instagram window on my big Mac, I think it's more productive to imagine, can we see iPad apps be on a Mac, but can we also see Mac developers making iPad software that we could not have seen unless Apple made this kind of framework? So I think it's going to be a fun couple of years. Even if this one, people like you and I, Mike, maybe, you know, we don't necessarily care so much about Marzipan, and bug fixes and, you know, performance improvements are going to be fine. But, you know, it's not like, oh my God, we're getting bug fixes. You know, it's not that kind of mindset. But I think 2019, if this strategy plays out well for Apple, it's going to be a really fun year for the iPad. I also wonder, and I wanted to ask you guys about this, do we really think that Apple is not going to have at least like 6 to 7 features about iOS 12 to show off at WWDC? Because that would be strange.
Well,
we got stocks. What more do you need?
The ones that I read, they are those, right? Do Not Disturb, multiplayer AI, AR games, Siri search, Animoji, digital health. Like they're your features. And then like battery stuff, bug fixes, you know, like that's what they'll show, and they're your features. And they can just make those seem like more important than they are or whatever, but they're the features.
So far...
Oh, like there only needs to be one of those things that they spend a lot of time on, and then that becomes the big feature, like messages was.
So far, it seems like my first prediction that Apple is going to have like a big focus on speed and stability is pretty much locked. And it seems like I'm gonna
I think I'm gonna
win that
right.
point. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah. Just winning a point doesn't win you the year, though. Don't forget that one. So to do all of this new restructuring comes along with some internal changes at Apple. Apparently, developers and engineers will now be thinking of a focus on 2 years of updates rather than focusing on 1 year at a time, with the thinking being that if you have one set of features that you're going to implement over a 2-year period, you can hold back the stuff that won't work and bring forward the stuff that will work. Apparently, this will give Apple's engineers more time to refine and polish and make sure that the features that they're shipping are the right ones. I mean, my thinking on that is like, doesn't it just cause the same problem? Like, what's 1 year and 2 years if you're still working on a defined structure of releasing? But I'm assuming that this will help at least some. But if you have two years sets of features and you get to the end of the second year and they're not all done, does it not just mean that you're going to have bugs at every second year? I don't know if... I mean, I would be keen to see if this actually goes about fixing anything, or if all it does is just pushes the problems to the second year. But maybe that's TikTok, right? I don't know. I don't know enough about software development.
I mean, there's the idea that work will expand to take the time given. So they could end up there. The way I choose to read it is like from an optimistic standpoint, that they are giving themselves flexibility. That if something, if they hit that deadline, the internal deadline, and they say, hey, this needs more time, they now feel like they can give it more time. And of course, like things have slipped in the past, like there have been reports of that, but this feels like organization wide, what I'm hoping for is the freedom to say, either mid-cycle, hey, this needs more time, or what was really more interesting to me, I think, is what does this mean in the future? If the 2-year cycle becomes the new normal, what could they do with 2 years of time that was never possible with 1 year? That is really interesting to me. Of like what
you start on something in July,
and it's going to be a 2-year thing.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I like that. I like that thought a lot. And I guess one of the big things is that it changes the corporate culture internally, where people don't have to be super nervous and freaking out that their thing isn't ready for a year when it's totally fine now to make it every 2 years, right? Like that, I'm sure that helps a lot. And I guess this is communicated in the apparent code names. iOS 12 is codenamed Peace. macOS 10.14 is codenamed Liberty.
Right.
Yeah.
And macOS may be bringing with it a Home app and an Apple Podcast app, probably because of Project Marzipan.
They should have just named them, we don't hate our engineers anymore. That could have been also a good name. That seems to reflect the mood at Apple.
Yeah.
iOS 12 underworked and macOS 10.14
stressed out.
There's still time.
Yeah. The two guys working on macOS have a little bit of a break. I'm just kidding. I know there's more than two people. So talking about this Project Marzipan deal, Apple will need some sort of like Halo project to say, look, we brought over Apple Podcast or Home, or I think what a lot of people really want is Apple News. Like Apple News is this sleeper hit we never talk about, but tons of people use it. They need to get on stage with this. And I think they need this is this iOS code base and it's written in Swift. And we moved it to Mac OS via this new project workflow Xcode magic that we now have. And it took us this much time, and we need to do these sorts of things. They did that with the Intel transition very, very well. They did it moving from Carbon to Cocoa very well. And so I think that we will see Apple spend time on stage, probably in the keynote, but most definitely in the State of the Union, which is sort of like the internal keynote. Like you can watch it on the website, but it's not what most people see. It's nerdier and more of the details. So I think they could use one of these projects, Home, Apple Podcasts, or Apple News, to say, look, we did it with this project. This is how long it took. These are the things we ran into as an example. And I think that the code names, if they're accurate, are hilarious. Like iOS 12 codename Peace, like people want their iPads and iPhones to be more stable. But also like macOS nickname being Liberty is really funny to me. Like you are sort of freeing the Mac up to do more, and to your point earlier, building those bridges for Mac and iOS, especially iPad developers, to bring their apps back and forth. Like if this works, and I think it will, like this is great. Like slowing down iOS development internally this year being a little bit of a breather, because let's think about the alternative timeline for a second. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry, but the alternative timeline is iOS 12 gets a new CarPlay, a new home screen, a new Photos app, whatever all that means. Who knows? And Project Marzipan is real. Like developers are going to struggle in that timeline to be ready for the fall. And I think what happens there in that timeline is that the cross-platform stuff to get an iOS app stood up on the Mac or vice versa, that gets pushed down the road for a lot of developers. But if iOS 12 and by extension macOS 10.14 are smaller releases, and the big developer push is this cross-platform stuff, developers may be more likely to adopt it earlier, right? Because they're not running around having to rewrite a bunch of stuff because a bunch of APIs changed in the photo system, or they have to redo all their icons, or widgets are a thing now. They all need widgets, like whatever it is. If all that's not present, Because my guess is that if the stocks app is redesigned, like that doesn't affect most third-party developers day to day. Like they're not going to be rewriting their apps because the stock app is different.
Well, you never know. What if it generates a sixth new design language?
Yeah, it definitely could. And so maybe this year we'll see third-party developers move into this cross-platform stuff earlier than they would have otherwise. And that is a huge win for all three platforms. That's big for the iPhone, but the iPad and the Mac in particular have the most to benefit from each other. And that, as someone who uses all three, like I'm super pumped for this. Like I am today sitting here in mid-February, I am more excited about this WWDC than I think I've been in a long time this early. Because if Gurman is right about all this stuff, because it means that my Mac and my iPad potentially could both be a lot better in their app ecosystems. There's so much stuff that's on my phone that's just on my phone.
Yeah.
The possibilities are great.
I'm very intrigued, but I'm assuming that because you are a heavy Mac user,
yes,
it is even more exciting to you as a possibility, right? Because it means a lot for the Mac.
It does
from an app development perspective.
And
if there's more focus,
it puts to bed, at least for a few more years, the narrative that the Mac is dead, because it's not. And I think Apple, if that was if that was the case, right? Like so say that this comes out and it's a one-way bridge. It's you can port your Mac apps to iOS because the Mac is a sinking ship. Like get out. Then I will be very sad, and our WWDC show is just going to be me weeping into the microphone. But this seems to be a bridge in both directions. So Mac developers can get on iOS easier, just as importantly, but more exciting for me, iOS developers can come to the Mac more easily. And if that's the case, and all the reporting says that it is, then a Mac user should be excited about it.
I think something that could be taken from it, and it depends on how it's presented, is that dedicated Mac development is dead. I think that might be a negative take to have from it, but
I think it may be eventually. But I think so. My guess is so take something like a really complicated Mac app like Logic, right? And that's internal to Apple, but it's the first complicated Mac app that came to mind. This may not give developers of Mac apps like that, the tools to get on iOS quite yet. Or
I don't think so.
And even then, as powerful as the iPad and iPhone are, they're not going to meet like pro Mac hardware and power for a while to come. And so I still think like low levels, like not low level, but like simpler apps. And like I'm not a developer, so forgive me, but like apps that aren't really tied to the hardware and like really pushing my iMac Pro, like all those apps, you know, it assumingly would be fine to run on an iOS platform. But there's still going to be some stuff that's reserved for the Mac, just like there's some stuff that's going to be reserved for iOS, right? Like really good drawing apps with pencil support aren't going to make the move to the Mac because the Mac doesn't have pencil support. And there are going to be things that each platform is better at than the other. But that whole like middle 80% of the Venn diagram that overlaps, that's where all the exciting stuff is going to happen.
I really hope that this also means that we might get the ability to connect a mouse to our iPads. There are just times when I would really love one, like doing some really intensive Google Sheets stuff. I would love to be able to connect a mouse.
It'd be awesome.
To my iPad
and who knows? Like I mean, this, in my mind, this breaks the dam wide open for things that Apple is willing to do. Because if you had brought this up, 6 years ago, the iPad's kind of getting up and running. The first one's selling really well. The iPad 2 is a big success. And you had said, hey, Mac and iPad development are going to merge somehow. People would have just laughed you out of the room because they were so different from each other. And now that's not the case with the pencil and the keyboard. It's like, who knows? Like, you may get a mouse one day. But, I mean, this means anything is possible.
So on that note, I think we should wrap up. I'm going to say, before I hand over to Stephen to do the official outro for the episode, please buy our T-shirt. There are links in our show notes. It's over at Cotton Bureau. It's called the Tiny Head Tee. We've got images in the show notes. We have links in the show notes. Go and buy the T-shirt.
If you want to find show notes this week, fire up your web browser of choice to relay.fm/connected/180. All those links are there. You can get in touch with us there as well. You can send us an email, or of course you can find us on what's left of Twitter. Mike is there as IMYKE.
What's happened?
I don't know. It's still there.
Okay.
They also had good quarterly results. Anyways, a lot of quarterly results last week on download, so I'm thinking about numbers all the time. Mike is on Twitter as iMike, IMYKE, and he is a host of a whole bunch of shows here on Relay. FM, and he has a YouTube channel at Mike Hurley. It's pretty good. You should go check it out. Federico writes macstories.net. It's a wonderful website. They have an Apple history column each month that I just love. It's just really, really good.
Yeah, I'm going to fire that guy. I don't like it anymore.
No! Oh, no. You can find him on Twitter at Vitici, Viticci, and you can find me at ISMH on Twitter and 512pixels.net and 512pixels on YouTube. Like Mike said, go check out the shirt. It's really awesome. I ordered one in blue, and I'm very, very excited about it. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SaneBox, Anchor, and Zola. Go check them out. And until next week, guys, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Goodbye.
Adios.